On January 18, 2019, I joined 4 other hikers, all strangers, for a hike on the Florida Trail. Our guide was Jimmy Bailey of Trail Walker Gear Outfitters in Bradenton, Florida. Our goal was to hike a nearly 50-mile section of the trail while spending 4 nights in our tents and hammocks. I was the youngest of the 5 hikers at a mere 56 years of age. Our most seasoned hiker was 74. We started our hike at about 9 a.m., heading north from the Kissimmee Prairie Preserve State Park office, which was around mile 211 of the Florida Trail. We had a modest goal of reaching the camp at Pine Island Slough, about 7 miles away. During that short stint, we crossed part of several sloughs to include 7-mile, 5-mile, and gum sloughs, and we passed through several hammock areas. We continued hiking until reaching the camp at Pine Island Slough. The camp at Pine Island Slough was quite comfortable with a picnic table, a pitcher pump as a water source, and a small fire ring. As the sun set, we listened to the owls as their calls filled the air. Throughout the night, we enjoyed listening to the calls of the coyotes. On day 2, we woke early and enjoyed a leisurely breakfast before breaking camp and continuing our journey. This was to be our longest hiking day at just over 15 miles. The day started with us walking across the fire breaks that had been recently plowed. This made for some very difficult walking. Our destination was the Kissimmee Trailhead just outside of the River Ranch RV Resort. Kissimmee, spelled K-I-C-C-O, is on the west side of the Kissimmee River. It takes its name from the Kissimmee Island Cattle Company that operated here from 1915 through the late 1920s. This area is popular with the local hunters, and we ran across several hunters throughout the day. The Kissimmee Wildlife Management Area consists of more than 7,000 acres along the Kissimmee River in Polk County, just south of State Road 60. About 13 miles of the Florida Trail traverse the area through oak hammock, scrub, cypress strand, and pine palmetto flatwoods. Wildlife is abundant and includes white-tailed deer, feral hogs, bald eagles, wild turkeys, hawks, wading birds, and sandhill cranes. We saw one of the largest alligators we had ever seen in this area. Throughout the day, we continued to move in and out of the various ecosystems. We spent much of the day near the Kissimmee River. The Kissimmee chain of lakes, Kissimmee River, and Lake Okeechobee are part of a larger water management system. This water management system contains 11 locks maintained by the South Florida Water Management District and 5 maintained by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We crossed one of the locks, known as the S65A Lock Complex, at mile 221. We continued our trek, crossing the Kissimmee Grade before entering into a live oak hammock where we enjoyed a snack of fresh oranges found growing wild in the hammock. We passed Rattlesnake Hammock Camp and continued through the dry Kissimmee River marshes, crossed Ice Cream Slough, and took a short break at the Long Hammock campsite. Since there was no water source at the camp, we continued on towards our planned destination. We arrived at the Kissimmee Trailhead just outside of River Ranch in late afternoon. The camp has fresh water from a faucet, picnic tables, a well-maintained porta potty, and excellent camping areas under the live oaks. Saturday nights bring the rodeo to River Ranch, and we could faintly hear the festivities over the loudspeakers. However, by the time we were ready to crawl into our tents and hammocks, the sound of the rodeo had been replaced by the sounds of the marsh and the forest. Day 3 started by entering the River Ranch Resort via the Kissimmee Trailhead. It was a short walk on an improved surface road before we reached the paved roads of the resort. Walking through the resort, we passed a number of luxury air-conditioned teepees, and then we passed by a tent camping area. We continued on the road until exiting the resort and continued for another mile before leaving the pavement. We climbed over the stile and enjoyed the change of scenery as we found ourselves in the first slash pine forest of the hike. We made our way up a small hill to the top of a levee. In fact, we spent much of the morning walking atop the levees and enjoying the views from our elevated position. Some of the levees were covered by a tree canopy, which made for a very enjoyable experience. We then moved into an area where the trail on top of the levee was covered in long grass, and it would have been difficult to determine this was a trail at all had it not been for the orange blazes on the fence posts. Upon leaving the levees, we found ourselves on State Road 60, a 4-mile hike along a very busy highway that was the least pleasant part of our journey. But we made the hike, including crossing the bridge over the Kissimmee River, and continued to endure the hard surface, the wind, and the noise for the next 4 miles. However, we were able to find a small stand of trees to take a short break halfway to our destination. We finally came to the end of our trek on Highway 60 and turned onto the gravel road leading to the Three Lakes Wildlife Management Area Hunt Check Station. The Hunt Check Station and RV areas both contained composting toilets and pitcher pumps, and the RV area contained a number of RVs, some in fairly good condition, but most were run down and uninhabited. We checked with some local hunters in the area, and they assured us that camping among the RVs was okay, as very few people would be in the area before April. The night at Three Lakes brought the worst weather of our trip. The evening started with winds gusting to 30 miles per hour. When the winds died down, the temperature dropped. We woke to ice on top of our tents and tarps and were longing for the sun to rise to bring some needed warmth to our group. The first part of the morning hike was cold, but as the sun was rising, so was the temperature. The 30-degree temperatures we endured through the night slowly gave way to a much more temperate hike. We walked in and out of several sloughs under the mighty live oak trees and enjoyed a beautiful journey throughout the day, stopping several times to shed layers of clothes as the temperature continued to rise. We arrived at Godwin Hammock Camp to find yet another well-maintained area with picnic tables and a pitcher pump. We enjoyed a nice snack before continuing the hike. We took a short excursion to the Lake Jackson Observation Tower at around mile 253. We continued on towards Dry Pond Campsite where we had dinner and settled in for our last night on the Florida Trail. Again, we could hear the coyotes all night long and were enchanted by the sun rising over the slough just to our east. We only had 4 miles to hike before making it to the parking area at mile 260 on Canoe Creek Road. As we parted ways with 2 members of our group, we knew that those who were strangers a few days ago had now become friends. We said goodbye and the remaining 4 of us climbed into the vehicle to travel back to where we started our hike at the Kissimmee Prairie Preserve State Park office where we staged the other vehicles. Again, we said our farewells knowing that our trails would one day again cross, and we would then pause to reminisce of our time on this section of the Florida Trail.